In just 47 seconds, $127 billion in EU recovery funds shifted from northern to southern European control. Ursula von der Leyen didn't object. She couldn't. I watched from the press gallery as Giorgia Meloni placed a thick dossier marked Article 7, Procedural Review, directly in front of the Commission President. The cameras zoomed in. The European Parliament went silent. What had the Italian Prime Minister discovered that made the most powerful woman in Brussels visibly retreat from her own podium? I've covered Brussels politics for 15 years, but I've never witnessed such a calculated political execution. This wasn't a debate. This was a coup disguised as a budget hearing. The morning started routinely enough. The European Council was convening for what appeared to be a standard review of the next-generation EU funds distribution. Von der Leyen entered the chamber at precisely 9:15 a.m., her usual composed demeanor intact, carrying the familiar blue Commission folders. She had every reason to feel confident. After all, she had survived the Pfizer texts scandal, the Poland Article 7 procedures, and countless budget disputes. But Meloni had been waiting, not just in the chamber, but for months, possibly years, for this exact moment. As von der Leyen approached the podium, I noticed something unusual in Meloni's expression. The Italian leader sat with her delegation in the front row, hands folded, wearing what could only be described as the smile of someone holding all the cards. She had arrived early, I learned later, at 8:30 a.m., not with her usual entourage, but with a single advisor carrying a briefcase that looked more suited for a courtroom than a parliamentary session. Von der Leyen began her presentation with the standard opening. Honorable members, today we review the successful implementation of our recovery mechanism. But before she could reach her second paragraph, Meloni raised her hand. Not the usual parliamentary gesture for a question, but a firm, decisive movement that somehow commanded immediate attention. Madam President, Meloni's voice cut through the chamber with surgical precision. Before we celebrate successes, perhaps we should address the irregularities. The word irregularities hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Von der Leyen paused mid-sentence, her jaw visibly tightening. I could see her hands gripping the podium edges. What happened next would be replayed on every European news channel within the hour. Meloni stood, walked to the central table, and opened her briefcase. Inside were not the usual policy papers, but what appeared to be bank transfer records, timestamps, and correspondence bearing the official seal of the European Court of Auditors. I have here, Meloni announced, holding up a document dated September 23, 2025, evidence of what I can only describe as the systematic circumvention of parliamentary oversight regarding EU recovery funds. The chamber erupted, not with applause or jeers, but with the kind of stunned silence that precedes political earthquakes. Even the translators paused, as if unsure how to process what they were hearing in real time. Meloni continued with devastating calm. She detailed how $127 billion in recovery funds had been redirected through a complex web of northern European financial institutions, bypassing the agreed-upon distribution mechanisms that were supposed to prioritize southern European recovery from the pandemic. But the real bombshell wasn't the money, it was the method. Transaction reference EUF 2025 North Priority Override, she read aloud, executed on August 15th at 14:27 Central European Time. Authorization code, UVDL Emergency Bypass. Von der Leyen's face went ashen. The authorization code bore her initials. I watched as the Commission President's carefully constructed political armor began to crack in real time. She attempted to respond, stammering something about procedural necessities during the energy crisis, but Meloni wasn't finished. The Italian PM had brought backup documentation, internal Commission emails, audio recordings from closed-door council meetings. Most damaging of all, she had bank routing information showing that the redirected funds had ultimately benefited German and Dutch energy companies. Companies that, according to Meloni's research, had pre-existing commercial relationships with firms connected to von der Leyen's husband's consulting business. Conflict of interest doesn't begin to describe this, Meloni stated, her voice never rising above conversational level, which somehow made her words even more devastating. We are looking at the structural corruption of EU institutions. The room's atmosphere shifted dramatically. MEPs who had been scrolling their phones were now leaning forward. The press gallery, where I sat, was buzzing with reporters frantically typing, trying to process the magnitude of what was unfolding. Von der Leyen tried to regain control. She cited procedural rules, claimed the documents were taken out of context, and even attempted to question the legitimacy of Meloni's evidence. But each defense only seemed to dig her deeper into the political grave Meloni had prepared. The most damaging moment came when Meloni produced a recording. Through the chamber's speakers, we heard von der Leyen's voice from a private council meeting. The southern states must understand that recovery fund distribution follows fiscal responsibility metrics, not emotional appeals. Germany and the Netherlands have earned priority consideration. The recording was dated March 2025, months after the official position had been that fund distribution would be equitable and needs-based. As the audio played, I watched von der Leyen's political career effectively end in real time. Her hands were shaking now, barely concealing the tremor that had become visible to anyone watching closely. She mumbled something about the recording being partial and lacking context, but the damage was absolute. Meloni had orchestrated this moment with military precision. She hadn't just attacked von der Leyen. She had systematically dismantled the entire power structure that had kept Northern European interests dominant in EU fiscal policy. This wasn't just about money, it was about the fundamental direction of European integration. The coup de grace came when Meloni revealed her final piece of evidence. A signed memorandum between the Commission and the European Central Bank, dated just 2 weeks earlier, outlining plans to restructure recovery fund disbursement to prioritize fiscally stable member states. The memo bore von der Leyen's signature and was marked confidential, Southern members not informed. Ladies and gentlemen, Meloni announced to the now silent chamber, we have documentary proof that the Commission President has been running a parallel financial policy designed to marginalize half of our union. The reaction was volcanic. Italian MEPs erupted in applause. Spanish and Portuguese delegations joined them. Even traditionally moderate French representatives began nodding in agreement. I could see the mathematical reality dawning on everyone present. Meloni had just united the entire Southern European bloc against the Northern-dominated establishment. Von der Leyen attempted one final defense. She claimed executive privilege, cited security considerations, and even tried to adjourn the session. But it was too late. The parliamentary groups were already calling for emergency votes. Within minutes, formal motions for a confidence vote were being circulated. The most telling moment came when the German delegation, von der Leyen's own political base, failed to defend her. Chancellor Scholz's representatives sat in stony silence, clearly calculating whether supporting her was worth the political cost. By 11:30 a.m., less than 2 hours after the session had begun, von der Leyen's presidency was effectively over. She hadn't formally resigned, but the momentum had shifted irreversibly. Meloni had achieved something unprecedented in EU politics. She had toppled the Commission President not through legal proceedings or electoral defeat, but through pure political theater backed by unassailable evidence. The financial markets reacted immediately. The euro dropped 1.2% against the dollar within the first hour. German government bonds fell as investors realized that the era of Northern European fiscal dominance was ending. Italian bonds, conversely, rallied as markets priced in a new reality. Southern Europe was no longer going to accept subordinate status in EU decision-making. But the real earthquake was political. Within hours, news emerged that France's Macron had called an emergency meeting with Scholz. Reports suggested panic in Berlin as German officials realized that their entire EU strategy, built on the assumption of Northern fiscal responsibility versus Southern profligacy, had been exposed as institutional bias disguised as technocratic necessity. Social media exploded with Meloni moment hashtags. TikTok videos of von der Leyen's defeated expression went viral. Twitter was flooded with analysis of what this meant for European integration. The phrase Brussels Revolution was trending across multiple languages. The implications extend far beyond personalities. Meloni hasn't just attacked von der Leyen, she's challenged the entire post-2008 EU power structure. The narrative that Northern European fiscal discipline must guide Southern European recovery has been revealed as political manipulation backed by institutional capture. As I write this, emergency meetings are being called across European capitals. The Commission is in crisis mode, with rumors that multiple commissioners are considering resignation. Parliament is preparing for the most significant confidence vote in EU history. More importantly, Meloni has demonstrated that the supposed technocratic neutrality of EU institutions is a myth. She's proven that fiscal policy has been systematically biased toward Northern European interests, and she's done it with documentation that can't be dismissed or explained away. This is the moment that Southern Europe stopped asking for equal treatment and started demanding it. Von der Leyen's downfall isn't just personal, it's the symbol of a new European order where Mediterranean voices refuse to be marginalized. The era of Northern European dominance in Brussels is ending. Meloni didn't just win today's debate, she fundamentally altered the balance of power in European integration. As I watched her leave the chamber, not hurried like von der Leyen's retreat, but with the measured pace of someone who knows they've changed history, I realized I had witnessed the moment when Europe's center of gravity shifted decisively southward. The question isn't whether von der Leyen can survive this. The question is whether the EU can adapt to a reality where fiscal policy serves all member states equally, not just those with the strongest economies. Meloni has forced that reckoning, and there's no going back.